ball with a racket is a great way to avoid having a job.
Well, that's also your problem. Because you think that tennis is about expressing yourself, doing your thing. That's why you still have that serve.
It works.
Yeah, but you're not a tennis player. So you don't know what tennis is.
What is it?
It's a relationship.
Is that what you and Anna Miller had today?
It is, actually. For about 15 seconds there, we were actually playing tennis. And we understood each other completely. So did everyone watching. It's like we were in love. Or like we didn't exist. We went somewhere really beautiful together.
This was more focused on the characters. It did seem very authentic in how it portrayed the sport. You know, I especially loved the line judge. That character was awesome. You know, even though all they did was just say what a line judge says, there was a lot of great work happening from that actor. You know, especially just when they weren't even saying anything. There was a lot, like the way, and that's a good quality I want to call out right now. There's a lot of great dialogue happening without words being spoken, just through people looking at each other or like their body language. And especially in that last act, that was very effective. But I just never believed that Tashi was worth the fuss. Frankly, I didn't get it. I didn't understand why they were so enraptured by her and allowed themselves to be so completely consumed by their relationship with her. And this movie was kind of sold to us falsely as a transgressive and dangerous, sexy movie. And there's like no nudity in this except for dudes hanging dong, you know? And there was a lot of that. And I guess if you like seeing flaccid penis, it's, you know, this is the movie for you. But the tease of that threesome scene upset me, you know, because like I was expecting something crazy to be shown on screen. And maybe, you know, that's, you know, just, you know, good filmmaking. It's like it was the right thing to do to bait people a little bit and just subvert some expectations. But yeah, the lack of genuine eroticism just really left me edged, and the whole experience kind of like left me feeling like, okay, everyone else has come, but I sure am not.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 42. Who says Gen Z can't handle sex scenes? We've got a review of the new Luca Guadagnino joint that promises all the action you can handle. Whether it be on the tennis court or in the bedroom, our featured review this week is Challengers. We'll also talk about what else we've been watching in the Watchlist, including our final review of Shogun, everyone's favorite show that they started but didn't finish. But we sure did. And we'll also talk a bit of film news, and as always, close out the show with the Mentionables. If you like what you're seeing, please do throw us a like and subscribe. Otherwise, Chuck, anything you wanted to get off before we get into the meat of things?
Just to maybe mention that the channel, we are very well back to reality. All you loyal 20 to 30 people who still tune in, we love you and appreciate you. We caught a blip on the algorithm there for a little bit. That was exciting, but we have to humble ourselves and just remember why we're doing this. It's not for all of your attentions. This is mostly for us. But if you like it, please do stick around, because you know we have a lot to get into this week. There's pretty big news items, actually, you know, that kind of thread through a lot of our recent content releases from our minisodes. But before we get into that, we have to, I guess, pour one out for the movie that never was. Quentin Tarantino's supposed last film, The Movie Critic. It was getting a lot of speculation. There was a lot of casting rumors. The wildest one that I enjoyed the most was the fact that Shane Gillis was supposedly going to be cast as the lead as the Movie Critic. because this was going to be inspired by a guy who reviewed movies at a porno mag that Tarantino used to read for the film reviews, obviously. And there was all kinds of like, fun things that could be happening with it. But from recent reporting, he has abandoned it and moved on. What is the story behind that decision?
I think it probably has to do with, because he has yet to speak on this on the actual like shelving of the movie. But if I had to guess, it probably has to do with just like the huge burden and anticipation that a project such as this would inspire. He has talked about retiring since like 2009. And he has, on like various podcasts and things like that, he's talked about his sort of desire to go out on top, and like how he literally wants to like drop the mic and just be like, boom, done, type thing. And so I don't know. It's just, I guess, if I had to guess, massive pressure and just like, I don't know. I'm actually kind of glad he's not doing this, because this sounded like way too meta in my opinion, because there were reports that like characters from his previous films might show up in the movie, like Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and like a sort of 16-year-old Tarantino stand-in would show up in the movie, sort of like the Spielberg character in The Fabelmans or something like that. And I don't know, to me that just sounds a little too corny for Tarantino.
A little slight too, because when you initially hear the pitch, it's like, we're going to be looking at the life of a movie critic in like the 70s or whatever, and that just didn't seem like the right material for him. It didn't sound like a Tarantino movie to me. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's right in his modern oeuvre of revisionist history that he's been inhabiting ever since Inglourious Bastards. And I just never was that excited for it. It just didn't really get my ghoulies going. And there was, I agree. I'm glad that he's going back to the drawing board. I appreciate the fact that he is accepting the weight of the pressure he's putting on himself by even like openly declaring years in advance that this would be his last one. So like find something better. I don't know what it could be, but he's the genius. He's supposed to be able to figure this out. Cause what, and like, was there anything like with like studio or like industry wise that might have dissuaded him from pursuing it? Like if he had Tom Cruise in this movie, would he have pulled the trigger on it?
I don't know. I want to say that was just wild speculation, because that was one of the rumors going around, was that Tom Cruise had like met with Tarantino about this, and also Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise. There was one really, really out of left field one. I can't remember who it was exactly, but some female actor I think had met with him. But I think that, it's funny you brought up Inglourious Bastards, because it's too bad that wasn't his final movie, because that movie has such a meta ending, with Brad Pitt carving the swastika in Christoph Waltz's forehead, and then, saying, oh, this must be my masterpiece or whatever. So it's too bad that couldn't have been it. But I personally I just want to see a regular old movie. Like we don't need the callbacks. We don't need the cameos. We don't need an origin story for your foot fetish, Tarantino. Like, just go out with a regular old movie that's really, really good. And that's kind of what I would say.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just going to turn into Kevin Smith. And it's all about just your callbacks and like which of your friends you could get available to like pop in for a day. And it just cheapens something that is supposed to be, a monument to his whole career. But yeah, like he could even just bypass that. Why not just make a Kill Bill-esque, gore fest? Just make something fun, because that's honestly, that's what makes a good Tarantino movie. If I'm not having fun, if he's getting too self-serious, like with The Hateful Eight, and he's just too, you're huffing his own gas, then, it just might be like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have done this. Maybe 9 was enough. Because in speaking of that moment in Inglourious Bastards, though, I think that little display of arrogance on his part is why he didn't get the Oscar for that, for screenwriting. And conspicuously, he hasn't won an Oscar himself. He's great at getting Oscars for supporting actors. That's kind of his legacy as far as that award season goes. And I don't know. The one time he won an Oscar, he had a collaborator. And I think that, I don't know, as far as his legacy goes, if he really wants to cement it and like kind of throw the middle finger up at all of his critics and, really shore up his post cinema career, because inevitably this guy's just going to start making content for like Apple TV Plus or HBO Max. And we'll be just getting, pure, unadulterated, masturbatory, like all of his weird little, niche fascinations. He could still do the movie critic as something else. He could write a book. That's that's the kind of dude he is. So, like, I don't want him to, completely exhaust his tap. Just give us what we want, man, which is you. And, stop trying to, be too self-important, because in the end, he's an exploitation merchant and he should stick with that. Mm-hmm. But speaking of exploiting, Matt, I really appreciated your MGM thing. Like it really quite hadn't hit me yet how wasted, that whole purchase by Amazon was. And it kind of is just yet another casualty in the long line of properties and entities that have gotten the kiss of death as soon as Amazon purchased them. And there's a lot of wild conspiracies flying. It's going way too fast on the screen right now, but the latest controversy is surrounding Warhammer and that Henry Cavill show that has been announced. And I'm going to get deeper in the weeds on that in my next mini, because frankly, this audience for this podcast doesn't have the time or energy to like have me expound on it. But basically, we're running into a situation where a studio note could be imperiling the involvement of the producer, and like the only reason normies could have to be interested in a Warhammer TV show, because the Amazon has requested a specific like lore change that is affecting the entirety of the Warhammer 40K experience, as far as the dogmatic, try-hard like lore believers in that fan base are, because we're finally going to have a female character donning armor that up until this point was reserved solely for the dudes. This is a very masculine thing. It's pissed a lot of people off. I'll get into that later. But the female Custodes, they're just a particular faction of characters within the lore. And we're going to have a female Custode because Amazon wanted one. And the only reason Amazon, allegedly, this is 4chan leaks, that they could want one is because Henry Cavill jumped the gun on announcing that the deal was done. Warhammer internally apparently was like, GW, Games Workshop, was like livid because they were like, yo, we haven't agreed to shit yet. And we had very specific demands, as a property holder. They have a stick up their butt about people doing anything with their product, especially like with video games. Any company that works for them has to be, absolutely within the dogma of the codex. And because Havel jumped the gun, they had to go to that negotiation table, and Amazon was like, well, everyone's excited about it. Now you have to give us what we want. And GW caved. And the way that they've handled it has pissed a lot of people off. Their stock is kind of tanking. People are cutting off their Warhammer Plus subscriptions. Their CFO is selling her stock and resigning. And like, I think there's some other, executives that are doing the same. But after watching Fallout, I don't know. I am not that worried. if that's like I know that the gatekeepers like Danny Fortuna on Facebook, that's an insider thing that you don't have to know or care about, but he's one of the ones banging the drum and spreading image macros around to try and combat this, and they can't handle this, but I can handle it. Like, I didn't think my expectations were nil for that Fallout show, but they surprisingly did a good job of giving the wider audience and like the core fan base a little bit of everything they were looking for. So should people just chill the fuck out? Like, we haven't even seen anything from this. Like, they haven't even shot a frame of it. So,
Yeah.
like, should everyone just call the fuck down?
I think so. I mean, to me, what I think is going to make all the difference with this show is who ends up being the showrunner.
Yeah.
Because
we don't know that yet.
Yeah, we don't know that. And with the Fallout show, you have somebody like Jonathan Nolan as the showrunner. And I feel like Jonathan Nolan can just swing his big dick around at Amazon and get what he wants because he's Jonathan Nolan. And so it all depends on, this is kind of like those Marvel movies where, the shitty ones end up being the movies that have like the first or the second time directors that Marvel plucks out of the indie scene, and then basically they're just producer driven movies that the director has very little say on. And then there are other Marvel movies that end up working because they actually get a director in there that knows what they're doing, and they have the sort of gumption to stand up to somebody like Kevin Feige. And so I think that's going to be the case here. It's like, who do you get in as the showrunner, and how much sway do they have at a company like Amazon? And so, but yeah, I think this could work out. I think it really comes down to the downfall of shows like this is how disingenuous they tend to be towards, like, on one end of their mouth, they're saying, this is for the fans. And then on the other end, they're saying, this is the perfect jumping on point for newcomers to the universe. And it's like, okay, which one is it? Because that's exactly what happened with the shitty the shitty Halo show.
Yeah.
And so they need to be outright with their messaging. They need to be upfront with everything. And I think it'll be fine.
And another thing in support of that, like the difference between the approach, from what I understand, that they're taking is that they aren't doing the Horus Heresy, at least not yet, but they are basically planning to do a whole slate of shows and maybe even movies. Who knows? But initially, they're going to go with what was the entry point for a lot of normies into the Warhammer experience, which was Dan Abnett's Eisenhorn books. Which focus on mostly human characters. The Space Marines barely show up, if at all, and it's fully entrenched in just the universe and one particular, niche faction of it, Inquisitors seeking out, Chaos Heresy or, Xeno activity. And Eisenhorn isn't just an awesome character, and I know a lot of people have issues with Abnett. I fucking don't. Like, and if you're going to do something, do that. Because, that's what started the whole revolution with Black Library, were those books that he did. And then I guess I forget which came first, the first Horus Heresy novel or Eisenhorn. But the Eisenhorn books are especially good. And I would hope that Abnett would be involved in some way more than just being a consultant. Have that guy write the scripts, or at least be in the writer's room, and the integrity of it would be maintained, femstodes or not. Because that's the dumb thing about this. If you believe the 4chan, my dad works at Nintendo leaks that have been coming out. This character that everyone is up in arms over is basically just there for the framing of the episodes, which is Eisenhorn being interrogated himself by custodians and Space Marine type characters, about the events that are playing out. And of course that begs the question, is Cavill even going to be in this? Because, he is, joked that, he'd rather play a Primarch character who don't exist in the 40K setting. They were only around 10,000 years previously. but you got to build the foundation first. And this is a good foundation. There's not a lot of room if you're adapting it, somewhat faithfully. There's no need to insert your own bullshit into it, like with the Halo show, and try and find some other way to get people invested, by having albino gay people in it. You could do a lot more, with less in that respect. And so that's why I still have hope. I'm not a true believer. Like a lot of the other people, I understand why gatekeepers are the way they are, but it is what it is. Like if you're going to get a company like Amazon to touch your property that you care so much about, you have to accept that there's going to be some fuckery. But in the end, if you have the right people actually making it, it can work out, for the better. And you just look at how Bethesda handled Fallout. They waited like 15 years, or more. It was more than, it's been almost 20 years, actually, from when they actually seriously started thinking about it. And all the opportunities that came their way, they said no to. And they finally were ready to pull the trigger on it, and it worked out. Because that show is extremely popular. And as far as video game adaptations go, pretty good. More than pretty good. It's better than most. Some would say the best ever. I'm not going to go there. But yeah, I'll get into the particulars a little bit more in my mini, because it's just too dense and too nerdy to afflict you poor people watching the podcast to get into it. So why don't we transition to the watch list?
Yeah, I think am I first up with the Teacher's Lounge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the deal here?
This is another foreign movie that I rented this past week. This is from Germany, and this got a lot of press late last year. I think they submitted it for their official foreign language Oscar selection for the country of Germany, and I think it was actually nominated. But I guess I gotta say about the Teacher's Lounge, first and foremost, thank God for teachers, because in Germany they seem to be in the same beleaguered state that they are. They're, as in the US, they're very underpaid and under-resourced and have to deal with a lot of shitty kids and even shittier parents. And then on top of that, they have to sort of navigate this minefield of teaching 20 to 30 kids without offending any one child's sensibilities or contradicting what they've been taught in their home life. And so, yeah, that's kind of what this film is about. It's sort of trying to teach and communicate universal truths that not everyone agrees are as such, I guess, because it's about one young teacher's sort of greenhorn idealism getting crushed in the face of reality. To kind of sum up what this is about, it's basically the actual plot is somebody is stealing cash out of the teacher's belongings in the teacher's lounge at this school. And while a majority of the staff are just kind of whatever, it's just a couple dollars, that's fine. You have our sort of very morally upright main character, Carla, determined to find out who the culprit is. So
it's kind of a detective story.
A little bit, yeah, definitely, especially towards the beginning. She sets her iPad up in front of her jacket that has her wallet in it and basically catches the person in the act. And that's kind of, I guess, plot-wise, that's kind of where I'll leave it. But because I don't want to give away who the person is that's stealing the money. But it's essentially from there about how even, people who are caught red-handed in something can sort of weasel their way out of, things. If they have things like emotions or workplace politics on their side, even if they are caught red-handed. And so, I really, really loved this movie. Really, really totally worth it. As far as I rented it, I think for $5 or something like that. And really, really liked it. And so, I would recommend it to anyone. And I'm not sure if this will be popping up on streaming anytime soon, but definitely worth the price of admission.
I'm going to seek this out. I've been a little too entrenched in like local politics involving the school system here in Minot because of my job. And like I had to cover school board forums recently, and one of the candidates is a dude who taught for like over 30 years. And
Okay.
and like one of the questions I asked him when I interviewed him was like, if you were if you were a new teacher today, do you think you'd last as long? And his answer was no. And his reasons for it were varied. And so this definitely piques my interest. I'm going to probably seek it out myself. Because I have a shrinking window of when I have, energy and time to watch things. So the stuff I have been able to see has been somewhat limited, but I've been looking forward to this one ever since it was announced. This next one on the watch list, this is the Sympathizer on Max. And we just don't see very many things from the Vietnamese perspective about the Vietnam War. And the first episode of the Sympathizer, like I was like, when I turned it on, I was like, Angie was like, I want to watch something, scary, or I forget what it was, but I was like, oh, I don't think I can handle something that intense. And then I turned this on instead.
Yeah, it's well, have you seen both episodes?
Not yet. I was gonna watch the second one today.
Okay, I think that the first episode is a great setup episode. The action scene at the end, or like the set piece at the end, seemed a little bit out of place, but it was fine. I gotta tell you to do watch episode 2, because episode 2, in my opinion, it's when he finally gets to the U.S. Our main character, the general, or the captain, not the general, and he's basically spying for Vietnam in the U.S. And Robert Downey Jr., I just gotta say, is so awesome in this show so far, because by the end of episode 2, we have seen 2 of the 4 characters that he is going to be playing in this show. And the second one is this, I think his name is Professor Hammer, and he is this like fat, gay Asian studies professor at like the local, I think it's like USC, and he is so hilarious in the role because he's just like, his office looks like you remember Bert Cooper's office from Mad Men?
Yes.
Where everything was like Japanese. It's like the same thing here, and it's really, really funny. He's just like a 1970s weeboo, and it's really, really funny. And yeah, Downey Jr. is so good, and I'm really, really glad that he is doing a show like this, because it's not like he's like slumming it, but he's following up his like 15-year stint as Iron Man and his literal like Oscar win with a like mid-budget Park Chan-wook TV show, and it's an interesting decision, I think, and I'm really glad that he's in this.
And why is he playing so many roles? Just for his own largesse as Robert Downey Jr.? It's like, it's just I'll plug me into these roles. I might as well, because we pay people. We don't have to pay as many people. Or does it actually serve it to have him being so many people so far?
I want to say, I mean, it is interesting. It is funny to see, but I think he's the caliber of actor that can pull off something like that. But then as far as like the off-screen reasons go, I think it also has to do with the fact that his production company is fronting a lot of the bill for this. I can't remember what I think it might just be called Downey Productions or something like that. And I think his wife is like the main proprietor of his production house. But yeah, he's footing the bill for the show, so he basically is doing whatever he wants.
Gotcha. And what do we think of Park Chan-wook? Because like, has he done TV before?
Yeah, he did do the very little scene. I think it was a AMC show, Little Drummer Boy.
Or Little Drummer Girl. That's what it was.
Little Drummer Girl.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Because like he does because he's Korean, obviously, but like all of his sensibilities serve like the period setting. Like he doesn't get too excessive with his little flourishes that we've kind of become accustomed to. Like, I mean, they're there, but they don't overpower it. So like it's restrained in a way that I didn't expect. And yeah, I don't know, I can't wait to watch the second episode now. I've been putting it off a little too long because I was trying to finish Shogun. And
Yes, and speaking of, I guess,
Yeah,
what do you think?
oh God, well, I'm happy with it. You know, like it delivered on all the promise of the like the first half. You know, even though there are some changes and differences, it lived up to like what they set out to do, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. This show is so funny because I feel like it just fell off so much, like popularity wise, and I think it's probably because once people realized there was going to be like no big battle or big war at the end of it, they're just
Yeah.
like, oh man. And I personally, it didn't bother me. I actually finished the book, I think about 3 weeks before the finale. So I wasn't really too surprised with how it ended. I think it's really funny in the book though, how they do the exact same thing where they never actually show the war at the end or the battle, and instead it's like summed up in like a 2 paragraph postscript at the very end of the book, like, like Toranaga, faced off against the warring faction and he became shogun, the end.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's really funny. But I think, yeah, this did a really good job of adapting a like literal doorstop of a book, a 1,100 page book, into a 10 episode miniseries, I thought. And, thank God they actually finished it and they didn't try and pull like some shit where they're like, we're going to do season 2.
I know, and I think what killed the interest for some people was the realization that there wasn't going to be more. Strangely, you know what I mean? Like, because people were like, "Oh, it's the next Game of Thrones," and I remember saying initially, "It's like, no, it's not. Like, this is an open and shut case. It's like it's over and done. If they do it right." And I did see a lot of commentary about how the finale was bloodless, and there was like they were like coping with that fact and trying to like try and sell it still as something like uber exciting and important, like at least amongst like the critical press online and shit. And yeah, I think they just people had the idea of what this show was versus what it actually is, and they kind of ran roughshod into that. And yeah, because I saw a lot of people talking about this, people I didn't even expect, like in like the YouTube commentary community, like who don't typically talk about any TV or like prestige or otherwise. They were talking about Shogun for a little bit, and I found that very weird. But yeah,
let me ask you this: so there are, by my count, there are like 4 major changes from the book to the show. And I'm kind of curious as to like what you thought of those changes. Which ones worked, which ones didn't for you.
I liked the old Blackthorn stuff because the Chamberlain version, it just ends with him trying to build his boat again after Toranaga has torched it, and then there's like this awesome shot of like Toranaga and his regalia like about to go to the battle that we don't see, but he's like kind of like like basically saying like, "Oh yes, Blackthorn, you will be with me forever." It's the one time a Japanese character like speaks English who shouldn't be, in that particular version of it. And I don't know. I liked I kept on comparing the two throughout it, and I appreciated this new version all the more for those, some of those insertions. Which ones didn't work for you?
I think all of them worked to some extent. I didn't mind the deaths, because in the book, Toranaga's son and Hiromatsu both survive. They don't die. But I think they worked in the show for sort of, portraying Toranaga even more so as a guy who will literally sacrifice anything or anyone to make his plan go through. And then the other two were the one thing that I really didn't like was because it's probably the best like sequence in the entire book is how they like transposed Blackthorn's suicide attempt to the last episode. And
Yeah.
that is something that takes place like on it like at 300 pages in the
Yeah.
book. And it's one of the best scenes in the book. And so but the most interesting thing is definitely those old Blackthorn scenes because I'm still trying to work out if those were even like real because
Mm.
in the scenes in which we see the old Blackthorn presumably on his deathbed, he has Mariko's rosary in his hand, but then in the scene at the very very end of the finale, he throws the rosary into the ocean. And
Mm. Yeah,
so
that's true.
I'm like, what is going on here? Is he just a mad? Are these old Blackthorn scenes just like dreams, or are they like? Is he just imagining that he has the rosary, or what is going on there? I guess I just didn't really understand that.
What interpretation I had was that he was, yeah, like if it was imagined, like if he was him seeing his future in a way, it was like, and and kind of rejecting an aspect of it. He knows he's going to be trapped there, or at least he's going to hold on to the hope that someday he can escape, and get back home. Because yeah, if he would have clung to that rosary, that would have been accepting his fate a little bit, and he has too indomitable of a spirit to do that. Yeah, in my view, just to speak on Toranaga a little bit, I forget which episode it's in, but it's when you really get the feeling like, oh shit, like things aren't going to work out for him, everything's going wrong, and and it's like a doubt never quite enters his mind because it's like he is just going to find some way through. He's so focused on finding that narrow way, and he never quite betrays to anyone what he really thinks, and he almost does in that moment. And yeah, but overall, like I just want more shit like this. Like as I know that they did a Roots remake not too long ago. I didn't see it, but I want them to return to this kind of thing. I want them to go back to when like popular literature actually meant something in the latter half of the 20th century. Like if we're, as long as we're like making like prestige World War II shows, it's like why not? Yeah, like what was that famous one called? I can't like her. I forget what I'm blanking on it. Well, is it War and Remembrance? I don't know, but like there's all kinds of stuff that is just sitting in libraries dusty because no one's been given a reason to pick them up. And so as long as this succeeds and is remembered fondly by people, I hope it inspires more stuff like this to be made. We don't necessarily need to go through the greatest hits of Richard Chamberlain. I would fucking love a new Centennial show with this kind of an approach, especially in regard to the Native American aspect. But yeah, because like if like Taylor Sheridan or Kevin Costner were to do that, like I am so worried about Kevin Costner's like Western epic that he has cooking up because it seems so incoherent about who we're supposed to be rooting for, and I don't know. I worry that there's not going to be nuance in that thing, and there's a great deal of nuance that can be found in the past that we just don't have today. So yeah, let's go back to a time when creative stuff gave you a lot more to think about, and instead of dictating how you should feel, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be awesome. And though, yeah, the last thing I wanted to say on this was the guy who played Yabushige needs to get some sort of awards consideration. Let's Emmys or Globes, whatever. That guy deserves it. I think that they need to. This isn't even really a foreign show because it was made by Hulu and Disney, but I think that nevertheless, institutions like the Globes and the Emmys need to open themselves up to like foreign language TV shows in the same way that the Oscars have opened themselves up to nominating foreign language movies in more categories than just foreign language film. And so
Yeah,
let's get Yabushige in there for best supporting actor.
the man deserves it. Because inevitably they'll just give Cosmo Jarvis like a I don't know because between him and I can't who plays Toranaga, I can't think of his name.
Sonata.
Hiroyuki Sanada. Like they're inevitably going to be the ones that get the nominations, but you got to respect the full breadth of the cast here because they all did a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
Time to move on to the main event today. The latest Luca Guadagnino joint, starring Zendaya, Mike Faced, and Josh O'Connor. That's Challengers, which is coming to us from a script by the man who brought us The Potion Seller, if people remember that. I still can't get over the fact that that's what this, what the origin story of this is. But I'm going to start my, my introduction here by quoting from the Bible. This is a reading from Ecclesiastes. And this is not just because I've re-entered the church. This is literally something my sisters had me recite and memorize before I went to college. Okay. Because that's the goofy girls they are. But more bitter than death, I find the woman whose heart is a snare and whose hands are prison bonds. He who praises God shall escape her, but the sinner will be entrapped by her. And that's what happened here. This is about a man-eater. Obviously, that's the song they use in the trailers. But it's Challengers is a little bit like An Indecent Proposal meets Wimbledon or Match Point run through the CW's plot generator algorithm. An aborted threesome and a couple broken ACLs destroy friendships, end a relationship, and alter the trajectory of the careers of our characters, or does it? You have to wonder if all of these people would have wound up exactly where they find themselves at the end of this timeline regardless, because they all are narcissistic and toxic as hell. The efforts of the script are hip. There's lots of rapid fire dialogue. It has an elite creative team. It has that booming score from Reznor and Ross. And its inspirations are obvious. You called out quite a few of them in the document as you were, considering this, like Succession and The Social Network. But it just becomes a big, giant, mush to me. It didn't click like the way that ideally this would have. Like The Social Network's Russian nesting doll structure really worked because every single time we jumped back and forth through time, we had someone commenting on it and kind of setting it up, and it informed the through line through that whole experience. And it had a lot of gravity to it. I felt no gravity from the events of this movie. The stakes just weren't there. It just got a little petty and uninteresting, as it went along for me. And it was like a poison pill because the sports stuff just doesn't matter. And you could probably get as much, I equate watching this movie to channel surfing and just happening upon a random tennis match you don't care about. Because that's kind of what it's about. Like the climactic moment is a boring ass challenger tournament that only the tryhards of the sport care about. And it never made me consider why I should be invested in tennis. And I think that a sports movie kind of needs to do that to get me to watch the movie. This was more focused on the characters. It did seem very authentic in how it portrayed the sport. I especially loved the line judge. That character was awesome. Even though all they did was just say what a line judge says, there was a lot of great work happening from that actor. Especially just when they weren't even saying anything. There was a lot the way, and that's a good quality I want to call out right now. There's a lot of great dialogue happening without words being spoken. just through people looking at each other or like their body language. And especially in that last act, that was very effective. But I just never believed that Tashi was worth the fuss. Frankly, I didn't get it. I didn't understand why they were so enraptured by her and allowed themselves to be so completely consumed by their relationship with her. And this movie was kind of sold to us falsely as a transgressive and dangerous, sexy movie. And there's like no nudity in this except for dudes hanging dong, you know? And there was a lot of that. And I guess if you like seeing flaccid penis, it's, you know, like this is the movie for you. But the tease of that threesome scene upset me, you know, because like I was expecting something crazy to be shown on screen, and maybe, you know, that's, you know, just, you know, good filmmaking. It's like it was the right thing to do to bait people a little bit and just subvert some expectations. But yeah, the lack of genuine eroticism just really left me edged, and the whole experience kind of like left me feeling like, okay, everyone else has come, but I sure am not. But what did you think of it?
Yeah, so I kind of had a similar. I'm really conflicted on this because do I think you should see it? Probably, but I don't like where it ends up. I don't like really the entire third act because all the characters kind of turn a little too cartoonish. I think you already kind of said it, but yeah, this is basically Guadagnino doing his best David Fincher impression, except he forgot about the likable characters.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no, you know, this movie has so much in common with The Social Network, but the one thing it doesn't have is there is no Eduardo Saverin type character. There's nobody to root for. There's nobody to ground the film. There is nobody to act as a traditional protagonist, whatever you want to call it. This is a movie about three horrible people doing horrible things to each other, all entirely avoidable. They are entirely the source of their own pain. Everything, all their pain. And, you know, there's a difference in a movie between being titillating and being endearing, and the former of which this movie has in spades, but only up to a point. And I think that point is essentially like when the third act comes around, where it's almost like Guadagnino and Karitzkis, or however you say the writer's name, they do try to sort of speed run a emotional core to this movie in the 11th hour. And it's just crazy to me how cartoonish things get, because Patrick suddenly turns into like a mustache twirling villain, and Tashi is the put upon wife, and Art becomes just so pathetic. And it's just like they fall into these very obvious like roles, and it really, really didn't work for me, because it's literally like, you know, Patrick is like, you know, fuck me or I'm gonna lose, or fuck me and I'll lose the match, but I might be lying. Oh, and by the way, I've been cosplaying as a poor person this entire movie. And Tashi is like, I'm literally gonna prostitute myself to ensure that my husband can win a Grand Slam and I can vicariously live through him. And then Art is like, hold me until I fall asleep. Oh, here's the shot, this random shot of me with my sleeping daughter for sympathy points or whatever. I don't know. That third act just really did not work for me. And you know, it's funny. Speaking of their daughter too. This movie is so concerned with their three like co-leads that literally every other person in this film is literal like set dressing, like literally like there is no co-stars to this movie. It's like every other person in this film is literally like an extra, basically. All three of our leads suffer from like main character syndrome, where they're like, you know, nobody else is of any concern, and they're all the daughter especially. I found that to be incredibly manipulative to use the daughter in that way. But But yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, where I'll kind of leave it for now. I mean, for the record, I do think that a majority of the film was very well acted and very, pretty well written. Like I actually really liked the not quite threesome scene.
Okay.
I thought that was like pretty well done. You know, how she essentially forced them to kiss each other, and then they just kept doing it, and then like the dorm argument that Josh O'Connor's character and Zendaya had where, they were about to have sex, but then she sort of, to get her rocks off, she needs to have like an argument instead. And it kind of ends with him saying that really good line where he's like, "I view you as my peer, not my better." And then he kind of storms off. And
I respected him in that moment. I really did.
yeah. Yeah, before he became like the outright villain, I was sort of on his side with a lot of the stuff in the film. And then they just took a weird turn. But yeah, that's where I'll leave it, I guess, for now. Where did you want to go with it from here?
I just kind of want to agree with you about the daughter aspect of it. She was there to just bring up Spider-Verse. But I think it does. I don't know, like it was like, yeah, like that one shot definitely manipulates the audience, but it also kind of shows exactly who these people are, with how she's just tucked away with grandma while they're really concerned with all they care about. And like the line she says about, "You guys always talk about tennis. Can we do so? Is there anything else in these people's lives?" No, like everything else is inconsequential. And even, yeah, like the sympathy points that Patrick, is given, in the earlier halves of the story, like all of that is manipulation. Like him sleeping in his car, his card not working, having to resort to Tinder to find some place to sleep during the tournament. Yeah, like you're supposed to be like, "Oh yeah, look how like much of a raw deal this dude got." But no, he kind of chose it. He could have been
he's choosing to be poor.
Yeah, he's choosing to be poor. He chose to, not give his girlfriend what she was looking for, no matter how right or wrong that might have been. And yeah, like the way that, his buddy manipulated, his access to his girlfriend to swoop in and steal her. But yeah, and even them making they both, Tashi and the other dude's name, they made their decision to link up, not out of love, but yeah, just because of it was convenience. And as things become less and less inconvenient, you make really weird choices, apparently, like giving your husband an ultimatum that you're going to divorce him if he doesn't win, and then trying to contrive a manner of ensuring that he does. Like she all she knows is to mind fuck the people in her life. And yeah, it just left like the last moment of triumph when she like stands up and cheers at the end. It just made me cringe, because it's like who are you rooting for in this moment? And frankly, without looking at Wikipedia, were you able to tell who won?
Oh, I think it was Art, wasn't it? Because he did sort of a almost like a volleyball-esque like spike into the other guy's side, and then that was really, really corny, I thought, where they ended up in a hug, and then it's like, who are you supposed to be rooting for in that moment? It's very, very similar vibes to the end of Civil War, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, and where it's like, what am I supposed to be feeling right now? I don't give a fuck about any of these people. And if anything, I'm rooting for them all to just go their separate ways, because they need to not be in each other's lives anymore. And so,
and maybe that is the happy ending. Like they are going to be going their separate ways after this. They got their moments of closure. They all finally culminated the three, because I think maybe that's the metaphor. The aborted threesome is exactly what eventually is going on in the court. She's watching them go at it, instead of being an active participant in it.
There was certainly, I mean, I guess if I was rooting for anybody in this movie, it was rooting for the relationship between Art and Patrick, not let's just cut Zendaya out, because I wanted them to bang. I wanted the two dudes to bang, because there was so much, weird simmering tension between them, and like homoeroticism, and like the small little things, like that scene in the Stanford cafeteria when they're sitting down eating those churros, and Art, before Patrick can sit down, Art pulls the stool closer with his foot. Did you notice,
Yeah.
stuff like that? And
Well, yeah, and
so yeah.
when they're watching Tashi for the first time and they're like so enthralled by her tennis, and I think it's Patrick like grabs Art's like leg and like grasps it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was a lot of that going on, and that sauna confrontation. Yeah, like that was genuinely simmering. But what do you make of the score from Reznor and Ross in this?
I think I liked it. I think that they have become a little bit too prolific as of late, where it seems like every like fifth movie I see has a score from either one of them or both of them. And I thought this was kind of a return to form, because it really did remind me a lot of the Social Network score. And I liked how it would just butt in during, in seemingly inconsequential scenes, like when there was arguments happening, or when the characters were just gawking at each other playing tennis. As you said a couple minutes ago, they're just sitting there in the stands, mouth agape, and just watching the tennis, and the score is just like a bumping EDM song. I liked it.
They leaned a little too heavily on that interpolation of "On the Run" by Pink Floyd. That like like that got a little repetitive, but thankfully they went in a totally different direction halfway through the movie. But yeah, it kept everything going. It kept the heart pumping, which I think was the intention. And it almost made, like in the volume mixing, like on those, really intense like conversations, it almost made you lean in more to try and pick up the dialogue better. So subconsciously it worked on a lot of levels.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I wanted to hit on was, did you notice the product placement at all?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was off the charts.
But like it was kind of, it had some authenticity to it though. Like when they're I think when Art and Zendaya are in the parking lot and they're about to kiss after he's asked her to be his coach.
Oh, the Applebee's?
And then the Applebee's employee just chucks a thing of bottles into the dumpster. I felt seen in that moment. I'm like, I've been that guy. I wonder how many meet cutes I've messed up over the years. But
yeah, that was pretty funny. And the billboard was behind them.
Yeah,
the billboard that said like see ya in the tomorrow or whatever. And but yeah, I mean, all of the expected stuff was fine. I thought, like the the sport stuff and the clothing they were wearing, the sponsored clothing and all of the tennis brands. But I really have to call out like the more unexpected, like weird stuff, like when they went to that like Young Tennis Pros of America party, at the very beginning, and one of them is drinking a like glass bottle Coca-Cola, and he's drinking it just so that like the logo is like facing the camera, and then like the Dunkin' Donuts sandwich and coffee that woman has, who is like managing the pro shop at the tournament. I'm just like, come on, like, are you serious? And I totally expected that though, because this is if people don't know, this is an Amy Pascal joint, and she is like known for that shit.
That's just how she makes the budget a little more friendly. You just front load all of that. Yeah, because like I've never had Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if their breakfast sandwiches are that to die for. But the fact that lady would give one up to Patrick, like, I was like, that's crazy. That would never happen.
How about the to talk a little bit about the look of the film? What do you make of all of like the camera trickery and like the stuff that was going on with like the tennis matches themselves to try and make them look more authentic.
The most jarring one, obviously, is when the camera is affixed to the ball and it's just getting smacked around. But or even like the POV shots, those were kind of arresting in a good way. But there was I don't know, like I guess I don't watch enough tennis, but it just seemed a little unrealistic that people wouldn't move that much. Like the camera could just be stationary at times and they could just swing at tennis balls tossed to them off camera. But half the time I was like, holy crap, like how did they shoot this without getting smacked? Like how many takes did some of this stuff take? And it probably wasn't that many because there probably weren't many actual tennis balls actually being hit. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It was pretty much all CGI tennis balls from what I understand from interviews that I've read. Yeah, a lot of the actual tennis balls being smacked were CG, and they used a lot of body doubles, like actual like tennis players, for a lot of the more intensive stuff, shots and stuff.
Were they CGing heads on? Was it to that extent? Yeah. Oh, really?
Heads and faces, or in some cases they were would just show them from the back, or show them they would cut them off at the head, only show the bottom half of their body. And so yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, I think it all for the most part works in making it seem more realistic, because I don't know, I think it's pretty clear that the actual actors didn't put in the work to become, actual tennis pros, which is fine. I mean, you don't have to do that, but yeah. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of stuff. Oh, and then just like very, very short shot lengths too. Like that final tie break or whatever it's called, the final set that they do. There was the average shot length was like a second and a half. There was a lot of jumping around going on and stuff like that.
Cutting to the crowd, cutting to like line judges, reacting. Yeah, like I did like the one crowd shot that was like at the end where it's just people's heads going back and forth. I thought that made me laugh.
Yeah, that was good.
So I saw this in an empty theater. Like how did the younger crowd turn out for this?
Yeah, my theater, I had mentioned before we started, my theater was actually surprisingly full for like an afternoon on a Friday showing. And it was a lot of like Gen Zers, and a lot of like older black women, and that's obvious because of the Zendaya connection. But I don't know. I fear for how some people are going to take this film, because if you are, enough of a midwit, I guess, to actually like get your personality from movies, and like you and you aren't able to like watch a film without like, having it affect your worldview in some way. I feel for like people who watch this and see these characters as like something to aspire to, because I've seen plenty of that online where, people see, somebody like Tashi and they're like, oh my God, she is so driven and she knows exactly what she wants and she's such a queen. And then they see, characters like Josh and Art, and they're like, oh my God, they are so like, they are to aspire to, they are so, just zoned in on what they want. And I'm just like, yuck, this is so gross how you people are talking about this film. And this is not something that, like, you are the same people who watch something like The Social Network and were like, I want to be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I want to be the Winklevoss twins. It's so gross.
No, in modern culture, especially online amongst the youth, I've seen all kinds of weird takes just about not about the movie, but just like the worldview that it would take to look at Tashi and be like, yes, that's that, like, like that's me. Like it's the it's the antithesis of like people watching Drive and identifying with Driver, or like, you know, or like people who watch Peaky Blinders and make their whole identity based around those characters, like or even like the weird perspective that's out there amongst some women these days, which is like cheating on your significant other is the most loving thing you could do. You know, because you're actually you waking up something primal within them that's asleep, and it's like that's how you actually make your man more of a man. Like that's the weird kind of mindset you have to look at this and be like this toxic stew that we have going on here, and being like, oh yeah, that's the life I want. But it's about, you want to feel in power, and I think that might be what drives it for some of the younger female audience to feel like, oh, like I'm not being used by the men in my life. I'm the one in control. I'm the one calling the shots. And yeah, it like that's an unfortunate direction to go, when you should watch this movie and just be like, okay, I was maybe entertained, but by God, this is an entire cavalcade of red flags showing you how not to live.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wanted to ask you what you thought of the sort of implementation of Art's tell, where they do that callback, where Art puts his ball in the middle of his racket before he serves. And I'm curious to know whether you thought that was like an actual clever callback, or if you thought it felt contrived.
A little contrived, but I mean, you had to give Art something, some way of actually genuinely, claiming something for himself, and since it kind of circled around, between the two male leads, you had to give him something, because up to that point they had made him feel very sad sack and useless and pathetic. So like I was rooting for him in that moment, at least a little bit. I was like, okay, you learned something. Now learn all the rest of it. So
yeah. Exactly. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention, but I just real quick want to call out just a little inside baseball with this movie. This was originally supposed to come out in September of last year, and I don't know who made the decision to delay it to now, but I think that was a genius move, because September has always been considered a dead month for movies, where like nothing really comes out and movies sort of go to die. But I think more importantly, Dune 2 released first. And I think that is going to help this movie so much, as far as the sort of Zendaya, raising her profile even more. I mean, it's not like she needs it, but it is going to help this movie so much at the box office. And I think at this point, they've even guaranteed probably a shot for awards consideration. As far as, at least for her, I think she'll get something, I think, for sure. And I think that was a genius move to do that.
Yeah, because that's typically the month where we do like director retrospectives, because there's so little for us to actually cover. Yeah. And I don't know, like there's a weird juxtaposition between Chani and Tashi, honestly. Like and I don't know, I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more. Is it because these are two, like they're alike in some ways, and like it makes me wonder about my feelings on the creative choices that Villeneuve made, with Dune in that respect, after watching this, because it's like now it's just like, nah, Chani, you have to just stand by your man. That's the feeling I'm having now. I've completely reversed, to an extent. But that's Challengers. You can see it at your local theater, and if you don't want to give your money to your local theater, like I've heard whispers that there's a really good quality cam rip out there. Shocking quality, but better to support artists. Because in this case, I'd rather seeing Luca make more movies. I want more from that dude. Moving on to the Mentionables. It's Free Comic Book Day, or at least it was.
Or it's going to be.
Going to be. Okay.
Yeah. So from when people see this episode, it will be Free Comic Book Day in 5 days, Saturday, May 4th. And I just kind of wanted to, it's probably the biggest day of the year for comic book fans. Just wanted to spotlight just a couple of my sort of must-have picks for the day. Just to give people an introduction. If people don't know, this is basically a day where you can go to your local comic book shop and get free issues of comic books. And typically they're like issue ones or issues of things that are meant to get you into a series. But my sort of ones to watch this year are DC has a special coming out called the Absolute Power Special, which is going to be the lead-in to their big summer event. This is Mark Waid's big event that he's been given, and he's just been killing it lately. And I'm glad that they gave him an event again. And then we've got the Energon Universe Special from Image. And this is kind of the extension of the Transformers G.I. Joe shared universe that Image is doing now. That has been surprisingly good. And this particular issue on Free Comic Book Day is going to have 3 stories from Robert Kirkman, Daniel Warren Johnson, and Josh Williamson. So like three heavy hitters doing stories. And then my third pick is a bit out of left field. This is the first chapter of a English translation of a Japanese manga called Gannibal. And this manga has been crazy popular in Japan, and it's finally making its way over to the United States. And I've heard nothing but good things about this.
No, that's a smart thing to put that on Free Comic Book Day. They'll probably sell some actual copies of the treasury of that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've really heard nothing but good things. And it's basically, just to give the quick pitch on it, it's about this small town that has a murdering problem and a seemingly cannibal problem. And so a detective goes to investigate that. And so, yeah, really looking forward to picking that up and reading that. But yeah, go to your local comic book shop and pick up some free comics, and maybe throw them, maybe pick something up that's not free also, just to throw them, $10 or $20 or whatever.
Yeah, the local shop in Minot is finally showing some life. I think someone new bought it. And they've been banging the drum pretty loud, trying to get people interested. And I'm probably going to go cover that for my job. I actually got to go to a Magicon yesterday, which is Minot's like 10 years old. It's their comic convention.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
And like, just briefly, like I have, like, even at San Diego, even at New York Comic Con, I have never experienced such a stench, because it rained. It rained yesterday here really, really bad, and everyone was walking around in like soggy sweaters and stuff, and it was a tough row to hoe being on that show floor. I'm just gonna say that. So if you go to Free Comic Book Day, please wear deodorant. That's all I'll ask of you. My mentionable is kind of a holla back to something I bemoaned about Apple TV's Dynasty documentary series about the Patriots, because the former Patriot great Julian Edelman now has a podcast sponsored by I forget which casino in Las Vegas. So has an awesome setup there, and I haven't really watched it ever. But then he had Ernie Adams on, and this guy was super forthcoming and extremely insightful. And it really gave the look inside at how the Patriots machine actually worked and why it was successful. And like it was just very, very fascinating. And if you want to get the fix that that the Dynasty was incapable of providing, maybe seek this out. It's fairly long. He does talk about a specific Super Bowl game and how they prepared for it and how they succeeded. But he's an interesting character. And now that he's retired and gone from the league, there's a bit of something that is lost and that you should maybe fear that isn't present in the franchise that you root for. Because this guy was the gold standard, and he'd been with the Patriots even before the Belichick era. Like that's like how long his career with that one team lasted. And it's worth checking out. I know it's a little old news, especially this came out like 2 weeks ago, but I got a lot out of it. So I'll just say that. But that does
I definitely want to check that out. He seemed like one of the more, even though there wasn't a ton of new info in that Dynasty show, he seemed like one of the more forthcoming guys, and I'm sure that has something to do with the fact that he is now retired and he could probably give a shit, less at this point. So I got to check that out.
No, he obviously doesn't get into any of the shit he swore he would take to his grave, but all the same, it helped me better understand why they were doing the illegal things they shouldn't have been doing, because like when you're working with that kind of precision and you're looking for any edge possible, you will do some skullduggery to make it happen, because that's how you know what you need to know when you need to know it, basically. Mm-hmm. That does it for us today. Go see Challengers, finish Shogun, goddammit, if you haven't already, and keep up with the Sympathizer, because like that's the new hotness for us now as we go forward, heading into summer. As I kind of forecasted, the next minisode's going to be a deep dive into the Femstodes controversy and all of the things that are going to be going into that, and and how Cavill himself is the one responsible for the decision that might make him leave that show. But you can watch that if you're at all interested. I'm sure I'm just going to piss off a bunch of like lore loyal diehards that are going to be very upset that anyone would have a non-soy answer for why it's not a problem. But we'll get into that when we do. Thank you, Matt, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep. See ya.